Hi everyone, welcome to the video. In this video, I just want to go through essentially what I look at when I'm looking at an Amazon listing, right? So a lot of people that I've helped in the past, um, I've noticed that when they are on Amazon listings, they look for certain things, okay? Now, what I mean by that is, for example, let's say if I had seller amp on the left-hand side here, they'll look at things like a flag for IP, essentially, and utilize all this data that's being given to them by, let's say, seller amp, for the sake of this example, and they won't actually look at the listing, and actually get an understanding of the actual listing. Okay, now what do I mean by that? Let's go through that now. For example, okay, first things first, with this listing, what is something that's very important that glares or that stares right in my face straight away? This listing is enrolled in brand registry. That's the first thing I would notice when I look at a listing like this. What gives it away? Obviously, that says store there. So this is a store. You can only get a store if, as a brand, you are enrolled in brand registry. Okay, now obviously something else which you can see is that there's a subscribe and save offer on this listing. However, something which I will note for those of you watching this video is that obviously this listing is not as a customer would see it because I'm not logged in as a Prime account. So obviously when you are actually on your listings and you're doing your analysis, you'd make sure you're doing it off a Prime account so you can see the true representation of a listing as an Amazon FBA or as an Amazon Prime customer would see it. Something else which I would do as well is that you can click into here, look at the other offers and take Prime to see what they're selling at. Okay. Now, obviously here we've got SFP because it's dispatched by the actual seller themselves, seller fulfilled Prime. Here we have FBA, SFP, and FBA. Okay, now something else I would look at is obviously our Keeper graph. Okay, very, 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 very important. All this data here, which Keeper gives us, and I do have a lot of videos on my YouTube channel about Keeper and how to use it because it's the most in-depth and advanced Amazon analysis software out there. Okay, now some things I look at here is obviously the buy box price and fulfillment type and how these listings perform at the offer that we'll be bringing to the listing. Okay, because that's all that matters at the end of the day. I don't care how a listing performs and it's priced £5 above what I'll be priced at. That's not representative of essentially what we'd be getting when on this listing. So we need to look at this data and either use historical data to see how our listings will perform or extrapolate how our listings will perform based on how the listing is performing currently, right? So that's something else to think about, right? So we look at some things like obviously the buy box offer, who's fulfilling it, fulfillment type, the price point. We look at how much the stock is selling, the sales rate at that time. We look at things like how much the rating count is increasing, because obviously an increase in rating count indicates that the stock is selling because sellers are leaving ratings. It's as simple as that. Other things we would look at is obviously things like our new offer count to see obviously is there any sudden drops for IP. And obviously sellers coming in and out of stock indicate that stock is selling. Some other things with cross-reference is ensure, let's say a listing may have a lot of offers on, however, actually going in, digging deeper, analyzing how many of these offers are actually competitive, because it's pointless dividing the number of sales on this listing by 15 if 10 of these offers are not even competitive. Okay, so it's digging deeper and actually understanding how these offers are essentially understanding how these are or whether these offers affect us if we were to jump on the listing at certain price points, right? Now, something else which you can do is click into data. This is things I will do for each and every listing. And once that loads, we can have a look. So we can have a look at that. So you can click into offers. We can look at how the FBA seller's stock is performing. So obviously we'd make sure that says FBA. I wouldn't use FBM here because obviously FBM sellers can manually change their stock levels, hence giving us essentially skewed data, right? That may not be accurate. Some other things we can look into is buy box statistics. However, we need to ensure that we cross-reference these statistics with how the listing is actually performing at the time. Why is that? Because averages can be skewed, right? Because an average is not always representative of how a listing will perform at these averages because there may be, let's say, drastic changes in the data, for example, such a high price point and then such a low price point, which obviously will skew an average. So these are things that I look at, right? So we have an in-depth look at these graphs, understand how these listings perform, how the data all intertwines and works with each other. Obviously, we'll look at the buy box statistics, cross-reference that with these graphs, make sure we have an understanding, cross-reference these FBA sellers, how they perform, how they reprice, all of these things, how their stock sells at different price points, all of these things, how stock has performed historically for these sellers on these listings. So we can literally utilize and leverage historical data when it comes to essentially making purchasing decisions, right? We can literally use historical data to make better purchasing decisions and essentially read the future, right? And what's very important is understanding how to understand these trends so we can better predict how these listings will perform when we jump on them. Okay, so now that again is very, very simple what I'd look at when it comes to looking at these listings. Again, you can look at these reviews to ensure that the stock isn't badly reviewed, because what you don't want is a lot of refunds, right? Let's say if this was 3 stars, for example, and a lot of the reviews were it breaks really easily or something like that. Obviously, we do not want to be getting a lot of refunds, which will obviously massively affect whatever margins you are seeing when it comes to stocking this product. Okay, so these are some very, very simple things I will look at for these listings. Obviously, again, like I said, we've got subscribe and save here. And yeah, you can also, if you want, look at some pictures. A little tip here, let's say if you want to source a manufacturer, you can try and look at these images down here and see if you can find some images of obviously the back of the packaging and see who their manufacturer is. But yeah, like I've said, these are some things we can look at. Again, we have our product details here. Again, you do have averages, but please do not be skewed by these averages. Why is that? Because this is what matters. Averages can be skewed. We need to cross-reference and double check these graphs, right? Ensuring that if we are looking at averages, we actually look at what brings about these averages. Okay, and this data is not hugely skewed, like I've said. So yeah, the thing with Keeper, and when you're looking at these listings, is there's a lot of information here, but it's understanding what we need to look at, which will massively accelerate essentially it will accelerate the decisions you make and make your processes much more efficient, because you know exactly what data points you need to look at to make these key decisions. It's pointless looking at all these things that don't matter. That's going to waste time. And that's literally going to add leakage into your business, opportunity cost, right? So we want to be making sure, yes, we have all these data points, but we want to be making sure we are looking at the exact data points that drive our decisions, whether they be purchasing decisions or revenue driving, profit driving decisions, right? So we want to use all these data points. Okay. Or not, we want to understand all these data points are there, what they mean, but we want to actually use the specific ones which matter to us. Okay. The specific ones which will make us money. Okay. And it allows us to place orders. Okay. Beneficial orders that will give us the longevity, the consistency that we want out of our Amazon wholesale business. So I hope that was useful. Again, like I said, it's very, very simple rundown of a listing, something I look at here. Well, essentially what this video was what I'll look at for certain listings. Again, this varies per listing, right? So yeah, I can make more videos if you want me to, like doing listing analysis, like specific listings. If you want to see me analyzing any listings, literally of your choice, leave a comment down below of specific ASINs and I'll make a video for all of you on specific listings that you want analyzed. Hope you liked the video. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe if you are new here, and if you want any help with your Amazon wholesale business from myself and you want to see if you're a good fit for my program, whereby we go through listing analysis in extreme depths, advanced analysis in extreme depths, right? Link in the description to see if you're a good fit for the program. Again, if you like the video, subscribe if you are new. Any ASINs you want analyzing, leave in the comments.